There's still no word on a cure for the virus. Government officials report...
Frankenstein, where is it? Where is it? Ah! Quiet, you fool! Get away with that torch. It's just you and me. And we're going to die, too. No, Paul. Keep away from me. I'm trying to help you. Paul!
Hello, Tarantula lovers. I'm Alex and welcome back to Tarantula Haven. I don't know about you, but that was me many, many years ago. I used to be a horror movie fanatic. I used to love to watch horror movies. And when I was very, very young, I was a real chicken and I was scared of everything, but something flipped inside of me. And then I was just fascinated by them. Anything that dealt with monsters and creatures and so on just completely fascinated me. So today being Halloween, this is my Halloween episode. And I kind of want to do things a little bit different than just your top 5 Halloween tarantulas. I'm kind of doing something that brings in a little bit about that Hollywood fascination that I had as a child and things that inspire me as far as Halloween is concerned. So let's start things off with a tarantula that I feel invokes the spirit of Halloween. Jack-o'-lanterns are traditional as far as Halloween is concerned. So here is a tarantula that inspires the spirit of Halloween, the pumpkin patch tarantula. Just kidding, I'm not doing the pumpkin patch tarantula. That is so overdone. Everybody does the pumpkin patch for Halloween. So I'm gonna try something a little bit different. Salmopius erminia, commonly known as the Venezuelan sun tiger. If there has ever been a tarantula that embodies the spirit of Halloween, it is this one, with its jet black background and orange highlights that almost look like racing stripes. This tarantula is very reclusive, rarely coming out, and you will most likely only see her out at night. I usually see mine out at night from time to time, but if I make the slightest disturbance, she will usually retreat back into her hide. This tarantula is considered a gateway species into keeping old world tarantulas. However, I find my erminia to have way more speed and attitude than many of my old world tarantulas. This isn't a very large tarantula, but what it lacks in size it makes up for in attitude. Mine will always throw up a threat posture at the slightest provocation, and when out of the enclosure will usually bolt and try to hide. Out of all the tarantulas that I recorded tonight, this one gave me the most trouble. She kept throwing up a threat posture and she kept trying to bolt away from me. I consider it to be a very beautiful tarantula and a must-have for any collection. Wasn't she spooky? Just that beautiful striking contrast between that orange and black just to me says Halloween. And she is definitely a stunning specimen. When I was a child, there weren't a ton of horror movies available to me. During the 80s, there was this huge boom of horror movies. A lot of these classic monsters and characters came out during the 80s that we still watch to this very day. And the 70s had quite a few too. But I was too young to go see those movies, and my parents would never think about taking me to a horror movie to see any of them. So I was limited to what was on TV. And one thing that I could always count on was those classic black and white Universal horror movies. Things like Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and who could forget Frankenstein? So this next tarantula is a tarantula that invokes to me the spirit of Frankenstein's monster. Psalmopoeus cambridgei, commonly known as the Trinidad Chevron. This tarantula will usually start out as a light tan color, but will develop that mossy green color at about 4 inches. Although it is part of the Psalmopoeus genus, I consider mine to be very laid back and less defensive than the Erminia. They top out at about 6.5 to 7 inches, which makes a very formidable display tarantula. Mine likes to sit out all the time, webbing up everything in its enclosure. Although I consider them to be very laid back, juveniles can be very feisty and fast, and their venom potency is a little bit stronger than most New Worlds, so I would definitely recommend this for an intermediate keeper. I just love the P. cambridgei with their mossy green colors. To me, that just looks like Frankenstein. I could have used the Poecilotheria rufulata, which is another green tarantula, but they're long and lanky, and to me, that just does not look like Frankenstein. P. cambridgei, they are nice and thick and chunky, and they get big too, so to me, that looks like Frankenstein. So that's why I chose her. Now, who doesn't love a good ghost story? There are all kinds of ghost stories out there. There are ghost stories about friendly ghosts, ghost stories about ghosts that have unfinished business, but my favorite are the unforgiving ghosts that are just out for revenge. Poecilotheria vittata, commonly known as the ghost ornamental. This tarantula comes from Sri Lanka and parts of India, and it is considered endangered in the wild. This is a fairly large tarantula that can easily reach 7 inches in leg span. I don't consider this to be a very defensive tarantula, although they can be very shy. They are also very quick and have a high venom potency and will bite if provoked, so I definitely recommend this for an advanced keeper. Their patterning very closely resembles that of the Poecilotheria regalis. However, they lack most of the coloration of the regalis, having a more whitish gray coloration, hence the name Ghost Ornamental. Ooh, the spooky Vittata. I just love those grayish colors, those muted colors. They look like a regalis with the color bleached out of it. So I thought that was pretty fitting for the Ghost Ornamental. As a teenage boy, I used to love to watch Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Now, what teenage boy didn't like watching Elvira? But of course, it was for the horror movies, right? And I think the producers picked some of the cheesiest horror movies, and it was so fun to watch because she always made wisecracks and made fun of the movies all the way through. And I think that's part of what we like watching about these horror movies, because a lot of them are low budget and cheesy, and we like making fun of them all the way through them as well. So she is something that was memorable to me, not only because I liked watching it. I actually got to meet her briefly because I used to work at Knott's Berry Farm, which is an amusement park in California, and she used to have a show there during Halloween time at the Good Time Theater. So I briefly got to meet her, so that just kind of made it even more special. So I decided that my favorite tarantula, those of you that have been watching my channel for a while know which one that is, but I have not named her, and I finally decided that I wanted to give her a name, and I feel like it's very appropriate, and I named her Elvira. Basilotheria subfusca, commonly known as the ivory-billed ornamental. This is by far my favorite species of tarantula. I consider it to be one of the most beautiful tarantulas out there, with that deep black background and those beautiful purple highlights. I just think that they are absolutely stunning. I consider mine to be very laid back and not very defensive. In fact, mine has a very calm disposition, and I see her out on display quite frequently, usually in the mornings and in the evenings. The only times that I don't really see her are pre and post molt. Although I've been very lucky with mine being very laid back and on display all the time, keep in mind that every tarantula is different. This is a Basilotheria species, and they can be very quick, and they have very potent venom. I would also recommend this for an experienced keeper. Isn't she just absolutely stunning? I love her. I think those purples and the blacks are just so beautiful. And to me, they do remind me of Elvira. So now I have a tarantula that's going to remind me of her all the time. Horror movies are usually a representation of the things that we fear in life. And there is a common theme among almost all horror movies, and that common theme is death. Whether somebody's killing somebody else, or somebody has been killed, or somebody's already dead. Those are the recurring themes on a lot of horror movies, so death happens in almost every single one. So on this last one, I'm actually kind of cheating a little bit because I'm giving you a double whammy of tarantulas. I'm doing two tarantulas that to me inspired probably the most fear in keeping tarantulas. And one of them I swore I would never keep, but it was gifted to me and I had no choice. So here are the tarantulas that inspired the most fear in me when I first began keeping. Heteroscodra maculata, commonly known as the Togo starburst baboon. Stromatopelma calciatum, commonly known as the feather-leg baboon. To me, both species of tarantula have been the stuff of nightmares when I first started keeping, and I swore to myself that I would never keep a feather-leg baboon. When I was doing my research on these species, I kept coming across reports that stated that the featherleg possessed the most potent venom of all tarantulas, and the HMAC came a close second. Although I don't know if this is true or not, I do know that they both possess medically significant venom and that they could really put a hurting on you if you were ever to get bitten by one. These two species are often confused for each other as they look very similar, but there are definitely differences between them. The HMAC is more of a whitish color and the legs are less hairy and more stout. And the feather leg is more of a tan color, not quite as speckled, and the legs are thinner and more hairy. When I first heard of tarantulas teleporting, I really didn't know what to expect, but I learned very quickly with my HMAC as she was very prone to running and bolting and jumping. And this is something that they do quite frequently. Thank you so much to Richard of the Tarantula Collective for providing me this footage to give an example of how they can jump very easily. These are very quick and very defensive tarantulas, and they can be very shy. I rarely see mine, but I do get to see them from time to time, usually in the morning, sometimes late at night, but they will quickly retreat back to their hide with the slightest disturbance. My feather leg was being very stubborn and didn't want to move, so here she is biting at the stick that I was using to guide them. With their very defensive nature and potent venom, I would definitely recommend this for a more experienced keeper. Now, I'll freely admit that they still kind of give me the willies, and I do get a little bit nervous when I'm dealing with them. However, I am not fearful of them. I am respectful of them because I do understand their potential. So I was very grateful that they were very well behaved for me. As they grow into adulthood, they seem to calm down a little bit. My HMAC used to be completely crazy. I would never have dreamed of taking her out of the enclosure to record her like I did, but you saw there she was actually pretty calm. I did have to guide her around a little bit, but that was a lot easier than what it used to be when she was a juvenile. As a juvenile, she was completely crazy. She would bolt everywhere, put up a threat posture all the time, and it was just horrific dealing with her. I had to learn because she was my very first old world tarantula. Now, I don't have that much experience with a feather leg as a juvenile. This one was gifted to me as an adult, and she's been pretty calm ever since I've gotten her. So I know that they're probably going to be the same way because they're almost the same tarantula. So definitely be careful if you plan on getting a HMAC or a feather leg anytime in the future. So that was my pick of 5, actually 6 Halloween tarantulas inspired by my childhood and my love for horror movies. I hope that you enjoy horror movies as well, and I hope that you never lose the spirit of Halloween because it is so much fun to enjoy these things that make us scared so that we are not so scared of them anymore. And that does it for me today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to support this channel, I have a Teespring store where I sell Tarantula Haven merchandise. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters, and if you'd like to become a patron yourself, there's a link down below in the description as well as all the others. Until next time, keep loving the tarantulas and
Happy Halloween.